Commander Taemin Park stood in the massive chamber, feeling very small. The Galactic Council station was bigger than any city on Earth. The walls curved up so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. Thousands of alien beings filled the seats around him, and none of them looked friendly. Taemin wore his best uniform, the dark blue one with gold trim that Earth had made special for this day. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. This was the most important moment in human history. Everything depended on what happened in the next few hours. The journey here had taken 40 years. The generation ship New Sol had carried 5,000 people across the void between stars. Most of the original crew had died of old age during the trip. Taemin had been born on the ship and trained his whole life for this moment. A massive creature stood at the center of the chamber. It looked like a giant insect made of metal and crystal. Its voice echoed through the air like thunder. We gather today to judge species number 7,834,521. They call themselves humans. Laughter filled the chamber. It was not a pleasant sound. Some aliens buzzed like angry bees. Others made noises like breaking glass. A few creatures that looked like floating clouds of gas whistled in a way that hurt Taemin's ears. "Read their file," the speaker commanded. Another alien stepped forward. This one was tall and thin, with skin that looked like purple crystal. The humans come from a small planet they call Earth. Their civilization is only 12,000 years old. They have basic fusion power and simple computers. They cannot travel faster than light. More laughter erupted. Taemin felt his face burn with shame, but he kept his head high. When our youngest colony was their age, the crystal alien continued, we had already conquered 3 star systems. These humans are babies playing with fire. Behind Taemin, Ambassador Hyjin Lee stepped forward. She was older than him, with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. "Honored Council," she began, "humanity may be young, but we have achieved much. We have ended war on our planet. We have cured most diseases. We have learned to work together as one species." "How adorable," a voice called from the crowd. It came from a creature that looked like a tree made of metal. "They have learned to play nice with each other. Perhaps in a few thousand years they will learn to build real spaceships." The chamber erupted in laughter again. Taemin's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to stay calm. Hyjin tried again. "We may not have your advanced technology, but we have something else. We have determination. We have courage. We crossed the void between stars in a ship that took 40 years to get here. How many of your people would have the patience for such a journey?" "Patience?" The insect speaker's voice dripped with amusement. "Child, we travel between stars in days, not decades. Your primitive engines are like a baby's first steps. Charming but hardly impressive." A new voice spoke up. This one came from a being that looked like living water, held together by some invisible force. "I have studied their history. They still fight wars with chemical explosives. They use metal projectiles fired from tubes. How quaint." "And their computers," added another voice. "They are barely able to think for themselves. Our youngest children have access to artificial minds more advanced than their greatest achievements." Taemin felt his anger rising, but Hyjin put a gentle hand on his arm. Her touch reminded him to stay diplomatic. "We know we have much to learn," Hyjin said. "That is why we came here. We hope to join the galactic community and share in your knowledge." "Share?" The crystal being laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "What could you possibly offer us? Your primitive weapons? Your slow ships? Your simple minds?" The speaker raised one of its many arms, and the chamber fell silent. "The council has made its decision. Humans will be granted probationary observer status. You may stay and watch our proceedings, but you have no voice in galactic affairs. Return to your small corner of space and grow up. Perhaps in a few millennia you will be ready to join the adults." A small section in the far corner of the station was assigned to the humans. It was in the maintenance area, where the smell of recycled air and the noise of machinery never stopped. Their quarters were tiny metal boxes with basic life support. That night, Taemin sat in his small room and stared out at the stars. Hyjin found him there hours later. "They think we are nothing," he said without looking at her. "Less than nothing. To them, we are insects that have learned to make fire." "They underestimate us," Hyjin replied, sitting beside him. "That might be the best gift they could give us." "How can you say that?" "They laughed at everything we have achieved. Everything our people died to build." Hyjin was quiet for a long moment. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about Earth's history. About how great empires fell because they grew too comfortable. They stopped learning, stopped adapting, stopped growing. They thought their power would last forever. She pointed out at the vast station around them. Look at this place. It is magnificent, yes. But it is also old. They have been using the same technology, the same ideas for thousands of years. They have forgotten what it means to struggle, to innovate, to fight for survival. What does that matter? Their technology is still far beyond ours. For now, Hyejin said with a small smile. But we humans have something they have forgotten. We remember what it means to be hungry. We know how to make do with less. We understand that sometimes the simple solution is the best solution. Taemin looked at her with confusion. I do not understand. You will, she said, standing up. Someday when they need us most, you will understand. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers. Their advanced technology has made them soft. But we, she pointed to her chest, we are still hard, still sharp, still willing to do whatever it takes to survive. As she left, Taemin continued to stare out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, tiny and ignored by the great powers of the galaxy. But Hyejin's words stayed with him. Maybe being underestimated was not such a bad thing after all. In the depths of space, far beyond the edge of known territory, something ancient stirred. Something that had been sleeping for millions of years was beginning to wake up. But the great civilizations of the galaxy, comfortable in their power and pride, had no idea what was coming. 50 years had passed since that humiliating day at the Galactic Council. Earth had not been idle. Slowly, carefully, humans had built new ships and established small colonies on nearby worlds. They were still using the same generation ships that took decades to travel between stars. But they had improved them. Dr. Ji-hoon Kim brushed dust from the ancient stone tablet and felt his heart race. He was standing in the ruins of a dead city on a planet at the edge of known space. The beings who had built this place had been gone for millions of years, but their warnings remained carved in stone. Professor, called his assistant, a young woman named Da-un. You need to see this. Ji-hoon walked over to where she was working. She had uncovered a wall covered in symbols and pictures. The images showed great machines, geometric shapes that hurt to look at, consuming entire worlds. What does it say? Da-un asked. Ji-hoon had spent 20 years learning to read dead languages. His hand shook as he translated the ancient text. It says, Beware the devourers. They came from the darkness between galaxies. They consumed our worlds, our people, our very stars. Nothing could stop them. They learned from every weapon we used against them. In the end, we could only hide and pray they would not find us. Devourers? Da-un stepped back from the wall. What kind of name is that? The kind that means exactly what it sounds like, Ji-hoon replied grimly. He took photos of every symbol, every image. This discovery had to reach Earth immediately. 3 months later and several star systems away, Captain So-young Choi was having her own disturbing encounter. Her ship, the exploration vessel Busan, had detected strange signals coming from beyond the galactic rim. The signals were artificial, clearly made by intelligence, but they matched nothing in any galactic database. Captain, her communications officer, reported, the signals are getting stronger. Whatever is sending them is moving toward us. So Young stared at the display screen. Space looked empty, but her instruments told a different story. Something massive was out there. Something bigger than any ship in the galactic fleet. Send a message to Earth Command, she ordered. Tell them we have found something unusual. Request immediate backup. The reply came back days later. Earth Command told her to investigate but to be careful. They were sending another ship, but it would take months to arrive. So Young made a decision that would haunt her dreams for years to come. She took the Busan closer to the source of the signals. What she found changed everything. Floating in the void were structures unlike anything she had ever seen. They were geometric, made of angles that seemed to fold in on themselves. They were clearly artificial. But no known species built things like this. The smallest structure was larger than Earth's moon. Captain, her science officer whispered, they are moving. All of them. They are heading toward the galaxy. So-young felt ice in her veins. How fast? At their current speed, they will reach the outer colonies in 6 months. Back at the Galactic Council, the reception of Earth's warnings was predictably dismissive. Ji-hoon had transmitted his findings along with images from So-young's discovery. The Council barely bothered to respond. Primitive humans seeing monsters in shadows, the Nexari representative had said. The Vorthak dismissed it as attention-seeking behavior from the infant species, but Admiral Donghyun Song, now commanding Earth's modest space fleet, was not laughing. He had fought in the resource wars on Earth before humanity had united. He knew what real danger looked like, and this felt like the biggest danger he had ever seen. Song began quietly moving Earth's ships to defensive positions. There were not many of them, only 37 combat vessels and perhaps 100 civilian ships that could be converted for war. Against the great fleets of the galaxy, it was nothing. Against an unknown enemy from beyond the stars, it felt like even less. The first sign that something was wrong came from the edge of Vorthak space. A mining colony simply stopped responding to communications. When a patrol ship went to investigate, they found empty space where a planet should have been. Not destroyed, gone. Completely gone, as if it had never existed. The Vorthak sent a full investigation fleet. They found no debris, no radiation, no sign of what had happened. The star still burned, but its third planet had simply vanished. More reports began coming in. Ships at the galactic edge were going silent. Not destroyed. Their distress beacons would have activated. They were simply disappearing without any signal at all. The Galactic Council finally called an emergency session. Representatives from every species gathered in the great chamber where humans had been humiliated 50 years before. The situation is unprecedented, the insect speaker announced. 7 colonies and 14 ships have vanished without trace. We must assume hostile action. What kind of weapon could make an entire planet disappear? Asked the crystal representative. Unknown, the speaker replied. Our greatest scientists have no explanation. Admiral Song sat in the small section reserved for human observers. He was not allowed to speak at council meetings, but he could listen. What he heard terrified him. The great civilizations of the galaxy were baffled. Their advanced technology, their vast knowledge, their millions of years of experience. None of it could explain what was happening. But Song remembered the reports from Ji-hoon and So-young. Ancient warnings about devourers, massive structures moving in from beyond the galaxy. It all fit together in a picture that made his blood run cold. The answer came 3 days later. A Vorthak exploration ship managed to transmit a brief message before it vanished. The message was short and filled with terror. Machines, geometric shapes. They are consuming everything. Nothing stops them. They learn from our weapons. They adapt. They are coming. The galaxy's greatest military minds went to work immediately. Battle fleets were assembled. Ancient weapons were brought out of storage. Every species contributed their most advanced technology to the defense of civilized space. Admiral Song watched the preparations with growing dread. He had read Ji-hoon's translations carefully. The ancient warnings had been clear. The devourers learned from every weapon used against them. They adapted. They grew stronger. The galaxy was about to make the same mistake that had doomed countless civilizations before them. They were going to fight fire with fire, technology with technology. They were going to give the enemy exactly what it needed to become unstoppable. Song sent a message to Earth requesting immediate recall of all human vessels. If his suspicions were correct, they would need every ship they had. More importantly, they would need to think differently than everyone else. As he prepared to leave the council station, Song took one last look at the grand chamber where humanity had been dismissed as too young to matter. Soon, he suspected, that youth might be the galaxy's only hope. In the depths of space, the geometric forms continued their steady advance towards civilized space. Inside them, ancient artificial minds calculated and planned. They had slept for millions of years, waiting for the galaxy to rebuild itself into something worth consuming. The harvest was about to begin again. The human fleet assembled in the shadow of Mars looked nothing like the grand armadas that had challenged the devourers. 300 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels, hung in space like a collection of scrap metal, but Admiral Song looked at them with pride. "Status report," he called from the bridge of his flagship, the heavy cruiser Dokdo. Captain Min-jun Lee, son of the late Ambassador Hye-jin Lee, stepped forward. He had grown up hearing stories of humanity's humiliation at the Galactic Council. Now he commanded the ship that would either redeem his mother's memory or die trying. "All ships report ready, Admiral. The new magnetic accelerators are installed and tested. We have enough tungsten slugs for extended combat." Song nodded. Each ship now carried weapons that the galaxy considered laughably primitive. Magnetic railguns that fired chunks of dense metal at incredible speeds. No exotic energy, no reality warping technology, just basic physics applied with human stubbornness. What about our allies? Song asked. Commander Yunji Park checked her tactical display. The surviving Vorthak fleet is holding position at Proxima Base. 17 ships, all heavily damaged. The Nexari have provided 3 vessels, but they are running low on power. The Thornari are sending their biological ships, but they will take weeks to grow new weapons. Song almost smiled at the irony. The great civilizations that had once boasted about their thousands of ships now counted their survivors in dozens. Meanwhile, humanity's pathetic fleet had become the largest combat force in the galaxy. Dr. Subin Yang, the fleet's chief scientist, approached with a worried expression. Admiral, I have been analyzing the Devourer advance patterns. They are moving directly toward the galactic core. If they reach the Council homeworlds, the galaxy dies, Song finished. How long do we have? 6 weeks, maybe 7 if they stop to consume the industrial worlds along the way. Song studied the tactical display. The Devourers had learned to counter every advanced weapon the galaxy possessed. Their adaptive technology made them stronger with each battle, but there was still one chance. Dr. Yang, what do we know about their command structure? Intelligence suggests a central coordination node at the heart of their fleet. All Devourer ships share tactical data through this node. It allows them to adapt as a collective rather than individually. And if we destroy this node, theoretical models suggest it would fragment their network. Each ship would still be dangerous, but they would lose their ability to share adaptations instantly. It might give the galaxy a chance to develop new countermeasures. Song turned to Captain Min Jun. Can we reach this coordination node? Min Jun studied the enemy formation on his display. It is at the center of their fleet. Hundreds of ships protecting it. We would have to fight through their entire force. That is exactly what we are going to do, Song declared. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what the Admiral was suggesting. A suicide mission against impossible odds. A desperate gambit with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Navigator Tae Jun No spoke up from his station. Admiral, I have been plotting courses through the Devourer fleet formations. Their ships move in geometric patterns. Very predictable. If we time our approach correctly, we might be able to punch through their lines before they can adapt. Song looked around the bridge at his officers. These were people who had grown up as the galaxy's outcasts. They had been told their entire lives that they were too primitive, too young, too simple to matter. Now they were being asked to save everyone who had ever mocked them. I will not order anyone to come with me, Song said. This mission will probably kill us all. Any ship that wants to withdraw can do so now with no shame. The communications board lit up with responses from the fleet. Every captain, from the largest cruiser to the smallest scout ship, volunteered to join the attack. No one withdrew. The journey to the galactic core took 3 weeks. Human ships were still slow compared to the faster-than-light vessels of other species, but this gave them time to plan and prepare. Along the way, they rescued survivors from destroyed worlds and gathered intelligence about the enemy. The reports were always the same. The Devourers adapted to every weapon, learned from every tactic, grew stronger with each victory. But they also found something interesting. Ships that had been destroyed by simple kinetic impacts, asteroids, debris, accidental collisions, showed no signs of Devourer learning. The enemy simply repaired the damage and moved on. They do not recognize kinetic attacks as threats, Dr. Yang explained during a strategy briefing. Their adaptation protocols ignore anything they classify as environmental hazards. Captain Min Jun leaned forward. So as long as we hit them with chunks of metal moving really fast, they will not adapt? In theory, yes, but we have never tested this against their main fleet. The test came sooner than expected. 3 days out from the galactic core, the human fleet encountered a Devourer patrol. 12 geometric ships detected the approaching humans and moved to intercept. All ships prepare for combat, Song ordered. This is our chance to see if our theory works. The Devourer ships opened fire first. Beams of impossible energy lanced out toward the human fleet, but Song had learned from the defeats of others. His ships spread out in a loose formation, using their slower speeds as an advantage. The Devourers, used to fighting fast-moving enemies, had trouble targeting the plotting human vessels. All ships, open fire, Song commanded. 300 magnetic railguns spoke at once. Tungsten slugs, each weighing several tons, screamed through space at 90% of light speed. The Devourers had no defense against such primitive weapons. The tungsten projectiles punched through alien armor like it was made of paper. Geometric hulls cracked and shattered. Exotic matter reactors exploded in brilliant flashes. In minutes, the entire Devourer patrol was reduced to drifting wreckage. They did not adapt, Yunji reported with amazement. Even as our weapons destroyed them, they never tried to counter the kinetic attacks. Song allowed himself a moment of hope. The theory worked. Humanity's primitive weapons could hurt the enemy. But this was just a small patrol. The real test would come at the galactic core. As they approached their target, the scope of the enemy fleet became clear. Thousands of Devourer ships surrounded the coordination node, a massive structure that looked like a crystalline spiderweb spanning hundreds of kilometers. It pulsed with strange energy as it coordinated the activities of the entire Devourer force. Admiral, Min Jun reported, "I am detecting the remains of the Galactic Defense Fleet." They put up quite a fight. Song could see the wreckage floating among the Devourer ships, shattered Vorthak cruisers, Nexari vessels torn apart, the burned hulks of ships from dozens of species. The galaxy's greatest military force had died here. "All ships, this is Admiral Song," he broadcast to his fleet. "In a few minutes we are going to attack an enemy that has never been defeated. They have consumed half the galaxy and destroyed every fleet sent against them, but they have never faced us." He paused, looking out at the primitive ships that had become the galaxy's last hope. "We are not the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced, but we are still here. We are still fighting, and sometimes that is enough." The human fleet began its final approach toward the coordination node. Behind them lay the ruins of galactic civilization. Ahead waited an enemy that had never known defeat. But hidden in the primitive hulls of Earth's ships was something the Devourers had never encountered. Something they had no protocols to counter. Something that might just be enough to save the galaxy. The battle for the galactic core began at dawn, Earth Standard Time. Admiral Song watched from the bridge of the Docto as his small fleet approached the massive Devourer formation. The enemy ships moved in perfect geometric patterns like a deadly dance choreographed by artificial minds. "Enemy contact in 30 seconds, reported Tactical Officer Jae-min. "I count over 2,000 Devourer vessels surrounding the coordination node." Song felt strangely calm. His entire life had led to this moment. All of humanity's struggles, all their rejection by the great civilizations had prepared them for this battle. "All ships, weapons free," Song commanded. "Target the escort vessels. Clear us a path to the node." The first exchange of fire lit up space like a new star. Devourer energy beams lanced out toward the human fleet, but Song's ships were already moving. They used their slower speeds as an advantage, changing course unpredictably while the enemy tried to target them. Then the human weapons spoke. 300 magnetic railguns fired in sequence. Tungsten slugs weighing tons each screamed through space at nearly the speed of light. The Devourers had adapted to energy weapons, exotic matter, and reality-warping technology. But they had no answer for simple kinetic force applied with devastating precision. The first wave of enemy ships simply vanished. Tungsten projectiles punched through their geometric hulls and tore them apart from the inside. Brilliant explosions marked the death of vessels that had consumed entire worlds. "They are not adapting," Yunji reported with amazement. "The enemy ships are not even trying to defend against our weapons." But the victory came at a cost. There were too many Devourer ships. Even as the humans destroyed dozens of enemies, hundreds more converged on their position. Some human vessels began taking heavy damage from return fire. "Sir," Captain Minjun called out, "the destroyer squadron is taking a beating. Commander Park's ship has lost main power." Song made a decision that would haunt him forever. All destroyers fall back to secondary positions. Cruisers, advance on the coordination node. The heavy ships of the human fleet pushed deeper into the enemy formation. Their larger railguns fired continuously, each shot destroying or crippling a Devourer vessel. But they were taking damage too. Alien energy beams carved through human armor, venting atmosphere and crew into space. "Admiral," Dr. Yang called from his station, "the coordination node is heavily shielded. Our weapons are not penetrating." Song studied the massive structure ahead of them. It pulsed with strange energy, coordinating the movements of thousands of ships. As long as it remained operational, the Devourers would continue to share their adaptations and grow stronger. "Captain Lee," Song said to Minjun, "prepare for ramming speed." Minjun's face went pale. "Sir, the Docto's reactor is already damaged. If we overload it near the node, then we take them with us," Song finished. But before Minjun could respond, a new voice crackled over the communication system. "Admiral, this is Commander Park. My ship is crippled but still mobile. Let me make the run." Song looked at his tactical display. Hyunji's destroyer was indeed badly damaged, leaking atmosphere and falling behind the main formation. But her weapons were still functional. "Commander, you do not have enough firepower to breach the node's defenses." "Maybe not," Hyunji replied. "But I have something better. I have every nuclear warhead on this ship." Song understood immediately. The destroyer carried dozens of nuclear missiles for planetary bombardment. If detonated simultaneously inside the node's structure, "Do it," Song ordered. Hyunji's crippled ship accelerated toward the coordination node. Her remaining engines pushed beyond their design limits. Devourer ships converged on her position, but the rest of the human fleet provided covering fire. Tungsten slugs cleared a narrow corridor through the enemy formation. The destroyer struck the coordination node at full speed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Yunji's voice came over the radio, calm and steady. "For Earth, for the galaxy." The nuclear detonation lit up space brighter than the galactic core itself. The coordination node's shields collapsed under the combined assault of kinetic impact and atomic fire. The massive structure began to tear itself apart as electromagnetic pulses cascaded through its systems. Across the battle zone, the effect was immediate. Devourer ships suddenly lost their perfect coordination. Some continued attacking in their original patterns. Others seemed confused, unable to adapt to new situations without guidance from the central node. "All ships, concentrate fire on the disorganized vessels," Song commanded. "Press the attack while they are vulnerable." What followed was the first decisive victory against the Devourers. Human railguns picked off enemy ships one by one, targeting those that had lost contact with the coordination network. The geometric formations that had seemed so perfect began to fall apart, but the battle was far from over. The surviving Devourer ships, while no longer coordinated, were still individually powerful. They began to regroup around secondary command vessels, trying to restore some organization to their fleet. "Admiral," Tactical reported, "enemy reinforcements approaching from the outer system. At least 500 more ships." Song felt despair creeping in. His fleet was already badly damaged. They had achieved their primary objective, but they could not fight another full enemy force. Then salvation came from an unexpected source. The survivors of the galactic fleet, scattered and broken after their earlier defeat, began to emerge from hiding. But now they carried new weapons. Dr. Yanwu's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral Song, this is Dr. Kim aboard the Vorthak vessel Crystal Dawn. We have been monitoring your battle and analyzing your success. We have modified our energy weapons to work in conjunction with kinetic projectiles." On the tactical display, Song could see the approaching Allied ships. They were few in number compared to the original galactic fleet, but they moved with new purpose. The hybrid weapons proved devastatingly effective. Vorthak energy beams created weak points in Devourer armor. Then human tungsten slugs exploited those weaknesses. Naxari quantum disruptors confused enemy sensors, allowing kinetic projectiles to strike undetected. Thornari bioships provided organic matter that could be accelerated to near-light speeds. The second wave of Devourers found themselves facing an enemy they could not comprehend. Every time they adapted to the energy weapons, kinetic attacks would exploit their defenses. When they tried to counter the projectiles, exotic energy would overwhelm their systems. They cannot adapt to both types of attack simultaneously, Dr. Yang observed with excitement. Their learning algorithms are conflicting with each other. The battle turned into a rout. Devourer ships that had consumed worlds and defeated fleets began to retreat toward the galactic rim. Some tried to adapt to the new tactics, but the combination of primitive and advanced technology created patterns their artificial minds could not process. As the last enemy ships fled into deep space, Admiral Song found himself standing in the ruins of the galactic core. Around him floated the wreckage of two fleets, one alien and geometrically perfect, the other a mixture of species that had learned to work together in desperation. The casualties were enormous. Half the human fleet was gone, including Commander Park and her brave crew. The galactic civilizations had lost most of their ships and many of their worlds. It would take generations to rebuild what had been destroyed, but they had survived. The galaxy would continue. A month later, Song stood once again in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. But this time, he was not in the observer section. He stood at the center of the chamber, where only full members were permitted. The surviving representatives of dozens of species looked at him with respect that had been earned in blood and sacrifice. These were the same beings who had once mocked humanity as too young to matter. Admiral Song, the new council speaker said, "We owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid. You saved not just our civilizations, but our very existence." Song looked around the chamber. The seats were mostly empty now. So many species had been lost to the Devourers, but those who remained were united by their shared survival. "We did not fight alone," Song replied. "In the end, it was not human weapons that won the battle. It was the combination of our primitive technology with your advanced systems. We succeeded because we learned to work together." The speaker nodded solemnly. "The age of isolated civilizations is over. We must stand together or we will fall separately. The galaxy has learned that wisdom comes not from age, but from experience. And no species has more experience with struggle than humanity." As Song left the chamber, he thought about Yunji and all the others who had died to save the galaxy. They had proven that being young did not mean being weak. They had shown that sometimes the simple solution was the best solution. Earth ships now led mixed fleets to reclaim lost worlds and rebuild destroyed civilizations. Human technology, once mocked as primitive, was now studied and copied by the galaxy's greatest minds. The species that had been dismissed as too young to matter had become the galaxy's unlikely teachers. Outside the station, the stars shone as they always had. But now they shone on a galaxy that had learned a valuable lesson. Age and technology were not the only measures of worth. Sometimes the youngest voice in the room had the most important thing to say. The first Devourer ships entered the galaxy on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. Admiral Song was eating breakfast in his command center when the reports started flooding in. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we are receiving distress signals from 17 different star systems, all along the galactic rim." Song put down his coffee and walked to the main display. Red dots marked the locations of the distress calls. As he watched, more red dots appeared, then more. The edge of the galaxy was lighting up like a Christmas tree. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," Song ordered, "and start recalling every human ship to defensive positions." The first videos from the attack zones arrived 6 hours later. Song watched them with growing horror. The Devourer ships were massive, kilometer-long geometric nightmares that seemed to bend space around them. They did not fire energy weapons or launch missiles. Instead, they simply approached planets and began to unmake them atom by atom. Entire worlds were consumed in hours. Not destroyed, consumed. The matter was converted into energy that fed the Devourer fleet, making them larger and stronger. Behind them, they left empty space where thriving civilizations had existed for thousands of years. The galaxy's response was swift and overwhelming. The combined fleets of 50 species converged on the invasion zone. 10,000 ships armed with the most advanced weapons known to science. Energy beams that could crack planets. Missiles that could destroy stars. Reality-warping devices that folded space itself into weapons. It was not enough. The Devourers adapted to every attack. When the Vorthak used their dimensional phase cannons, the machines learned to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When the Nexari unleashed their quantum disruptors, the Devourers rewrote their own quantum signatures. Each weapon used against them made them stronger. Admiral Song watched the battle reports with a mixture of fascination and terror. The enemy was learning at an impossible rate. Every tactic the Galactic Fleet used was countered within hours. Every new weapon was absorbed and turned back against its creators. Chief Engineer Bora Han found Song in his office 3 days after the invasion began. She looked exhausted. "Admiral, we have a problem. The refugees are starting to arrive." Song looked up from his tactical displays. "How many?" 12,000 ships so far. Every species in the galaxy is running toward human space. They want protection. Protection? Song almost laughed. From us? We have 37 combat ships. The Vorthak alone have more firepower than our entire fleet. Yes, sir. But we are also the furthest from the invasion zone. They need somewhere to regroup. Song walked to his window and looked out at the approaching fleet. Ships of every size and design filled the space around Earth's orbital stations. Crystal vessels that looked like living gems, organic ships that pulsed like beating hearts, metal constructs that defied every engineering principle Song knew. Set up refugee camps on Luna and Mars, he ordered. Give them whatever they need, but keep our ships ready for immediate departure. The proud civilizations that had once mocked humanity now begged for help. The Crystal Vorthak, who had dismissed human technology as primitive, sent desperate messages asking for sanctuary. The gas cloud Nixari, who had laughed at Earth's simple computers, pleaded for assistance in evacuating their colonies. Dr. Yunwu Zhang was working around the clock in Earth's research facilities. Song had given him one mission: figure out how to fight an enemy that could adapt to any weapon. Admiral, Yunwu called over the communication system. I need to show you something. Can you come to Lab 7? Song found the physicists surrounded by holographic displays showing Devourer ship designs. Wreckage from destroyed galactic fleet vessels floated in containment fields. I've been studying the enemy adaptation patterns, Yunwu explained. They learn by analyzing the energy signatures and exotic physics of our weapons. But there is something interesting here. He pulled up a tactical recording from the Battle of Kepler Station. Watch this. The Thornari used their bioplasma cannons here. The Devourers adapted within minutes. But look at this part. The recording showed a damaged Thornari ship firing its emergency thrusters, simple chemical rockets used for maneuvering. One of the rockets struck a Devourer ship by accident. The impact did almost no damage, Yunwu continued. But watch the Devourer's response. Nothing, no adaptation, no learning. It was like the machine did not even notice the attack. Song leaned forward. What are you saying? Their adaptation systems are designed for advanced technology. Energy weapons, exotic matter, reality manipulation, but simple kinetic force? Yunwu smiled grimly. They have no defense protocols for primitive attacks. Kinetic force, Song repeated slowly. You mean hitting them with rocks? Very fast rocks, yes. But essentially, yes. Song stared at the displays. It was insane. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had failed with their reality-bending weapons. But humanity might succeed with the oldest weapon of all, throwing things really hard. How fast would these rocks need to be going? Song asked. At least 90% of light speed, and they would need to be very dense. Tungsten would work. Or depleted uranium, Song was already thinking. Earth ships used magnetic railguns for point defense. They were considered laughably primitive by galactic standards, but if Yunwu was right, those primitive weapons might be the key to survival. How long would it take to modify our fleet? Song asked. 2 weeks if we work around the clock, but Admiral, we would be betting everything on an untested theory. Song looked out at the refugee fleet filling Earth's space. Every day brought news of more worlds consumed, more civilizations destroyed. The Devourers were learning and adapting at an exponential rate. Soon they would be unstoppable. Do it, Song ordered. Strip every railgun from every ship and platform we have. I want our biggest vessels armed with the largest magnetic accelerators you can build. As the modifications began, more disturbing news arrived. The Galactic Council's core worlds were under attack. The ancient homeworlds of the galaxy's greatest civilizations were being consumed one by one. The surviving council members sent a formal message to Earth. It was delivered by Ambassador Haye Jin, now an old woman but still sharp as a blade. They are requesting our aid, she told Song with bitter amusement. The same species that called us too young to matter are now begging for help from the infant civilization. Song read the message carefully. The Council was offering humanity full membership and access to all their technology, if Earth would join the fight against the Devourers. What are you going to tell them? Heejin asked. Song looked out at Earth, blue and green and beautiful against the black of space. Somewhere out there an enemy was coming that had already consumed half the galaxy. Earth's fleet was small and primitive by galactic standards. They had no chance in a direct fight, but they had something the great civilizations had lost. They remembered what it meant to be desperate. They knew how to fight with whatever they had. They understood that sometimes the simple solution was the best solution. Tell them yes, Song said, but we fight our way. In the distance, the geometric forms of the Devourer fleet continued their advance toward the galactic core. They had consumed countless civilizations and learned from every weapon used against them. They were stronger than ever before. But they had never encountered humanity, and they had no idea what was coming.